Shalom, shalom, shalom. Hey, what's going on? My name is Michael Sahno, and welcome to the 12 Cities in Israel podcast. I have the absolute honor of sitting here with Alexandra Zaslav. She is the program coordinator for Minds in Motion, a cross-cultural dance initiative program. Did I get that right?
That sounds great.
For children. How's it going?
It's great. How are you?
Awesome. I'm so excited. You have the distinct honor of being the first interview.
Wow.
I'm here for 2 weeks, and this is it. This is the first one. So you just made Aliyah.
I made Aliyah 2 years ago.
2 years ago. That's after we met.
Right. So I was here for a year. We met doing Ulpan, exactly, in Beersheva, and I'd been working already for a year in Beersheva, and then I decided that I was going to stay in Israel, at least for the temporary long term, and so I decided to make Aliyah.
Well, how did you, now, all right, so you are a professional dancer. That's your job. That's your career track. That's an incredibly difficult one. Not everyone makes it. And you're professionally trained, plus you were trained at college, right?
Yes,
am I correct? Where did you go?
I went to Butler University, so they have a ballet bachelor's of fine arts. They have a very big dance program. I don't know why, but a lot of the big dance programs were in the Midwest. And
really?
Yeah. Indiana University, Butler University. And I was there for 4 years, and I was training mostly I trained before that at Richmond Ballet and at Walnut Hill School for the Arts, and I'd been training mostly in ballet. And actually, while I was at Butler, I decided to do a semester abroad in Israel, and this is where I became interested in contemporary dance.
Now, how did you wind up? Because I know you were dancing for a dance company in Beersheva in southern Israel.
Right.
And while you were in school, correct? Or no?
So basically what happened was I was doing my first degree. While I did that, I found a really unique program. That's a training program at a kibbutz in the north of Israel called Kibbutz Gaton. And they have...
Wait a minute. Whoa, back up. A dance program at a kibbutz?
There's a whole dance village within this kibbutz. It's
What?
a really amazing kibbutz.
Holy cow.
It was started by a Holocaust survivor. This dance village with this dream of, after she survived, she wanted to open a dance community, a dance company in Israel. And so the dance village itself and the company that's based there is Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company, or Kibbutzit. And they are a world-renowned dance company, and they have a 5 to 10 month Masa training program. And it's with dancers from all around the world.
Holy cow.
So that's how I first came to Israel, and I first came for dance. And I think what people don't know...
Come to the microphone?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And what people don't know...
That's okay.
...is that Israel, on top of, is maybe known usually internationally for conflict, if it's negative, or for positive, for high tech. And actually right now, dance is really centered around Israel. Israel is like a dance mecca at the moment for the international dance scene. There's a really unique new movement, vocabularies coming out of Israel. There's a language called Gaga, which is now taught and exported internationally. And a lot of Israeli dance companies are touring internationally around the world. And so a lot of international dancers, in this program we had 40 dancers from anywhere from Asia to Europe to all over North America and South America that came specifically to train at this tiny kibbutz in the
Holy
north.
cow.
So that was what brought me to Israel originally. That's what made me fall in love with the dance scene in Israel. And that's what made me want to come back.
Okay. Now, all right. So I have to be honest. I love Israeli pop, and dancing is a major part of the vast majority of all the videos that are out. Trust me, I know it's not the same. It's not the same, but there is a lot of stuff that people are doing. So when you say that Israel is a dance mecca, I'm seeing it in the pop culture. You're seeing it in the artistic sphere. That's really fascinating. That's phenomenal. Now, you were dancing for a company in Beersheva, And from what I understand, that's a pretty world-renowned company as well.
Yeah, so I went back. I finished my last year of my degree in the States. Then I did a bunch of auditions, and I really wanted to be in Israel, but I said, let's see where I end up. And I got a job with this company that's in Beersheba. It's called Caine Dance Company. And they're a contemporary dance company, but they pull a lot from ballet as well, and have a lot of contemporary ballet choreographers from around the world they work with also. Okay. And they tour across Israel as well as internationally.
Now, what goes into... All right, two questions. It's a two-parter. So first, I'm a monkey. So my concept of dancing is just probably nowhere near what yours is. So what goes into training? And then what goes into, now, once we have that locked down, what goes into an audition? How do they parse between all of the dancers?
I feel like that's a very big question.
I know it's a big question. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So training, it's individual for everyone, but usually, especially if you come from more of the ballet world, you start when you're very young. So I started when I was around 4.
Okay.
And you take multiple classes a week. And then now in this day and age in the dance world, no matter what type of dancing you do, you need to be versatile. So even if you're training in ballet, you'd also take modern and jazz and, even tap or something along those lines. And you train, once you get to a high level, you're training every day for multiple hours every day.
Like what kind of hour, like time-wise?
So when I was in university, for instance, I'd have academic classes in the morning. Then I'd have an hour and a half ballet class. Then I could have, another hour and a half modern class after that. And then I could have 4 more hours of rehearsal. And that would be every day. And Saturday, we'd also have rehearsal all day. In the company, you are supposed to be past more of the training aspect by then. So you take a class to continue to develop yourself, but also as a warm-up. And the class would usually be around an hour and a half. We'd have an hour and a half ballet class usually in this company. But in another company, maybe it's a Gaga class or a modern class. Something to get your body moving, something to continue thinking about how to develop your technique and your artistry. And then you're in rehearsals basically all day, every day. So
wow.
In Beersheba, we worked from around 9 to anywhere from 4 to 6. And then because Israel's small, dance companies in Israel tour a lot. So maybe we'd have only a few performances actually in Beersheba. The majority of our performances happened all around the country. So we could be leaving, getting on a bus at 6 a.m., going and performing a show for kids, and then later in the day performing a show in front of a big audience at night. It really depends, but it's pretty intensive.
That's amazing. And what a lot of people don't know, because I had to do research. So that I would somewhat kind of know what I was talking about. And what a lot of people don't know is how athletic it is, how in shape, just how rock solid, and that's probably the worst phrase to use, but how physiologically you need to be just rock solid, not only because I was watching this one, there's this connotation that dancers eat nothing, that they eat leaves, they eat like rabbits, and that's not the case at all. You can't fuel that.
You don't actually have the ability. You're an athlete, so like any athlete, I mean, you have to be conscious for sure. There's a body standard in dance that you have to adhere to, but for the most part, the amount of work you're doing every day, you're not really thinking about that if you're in the middle of full-time work. You're thinking about what's going to give me enough energy, enough protein, enough carbs to get me through the day. Like,
you would so see the dancers awesome on break to hear you say that,
digging into piles of pasta. Like, it was we love to eat, but you need it because you need the power. And we're athletes, and we have this mix between athletes and artists because you have to have the artistry of being a dancer. So it's not just, really, it's not just, how can you physically do this, but then you're matching it with needing this insane physical capacity to push yourself to do what choreographers and teachers want you to do.
Good. Now, all right. So before you had auditioned, had you moved? Had you made Aliyah yet, or no?
So basically, thinking back in the order, I was at this kibbutz. I came back, I finished. I did the audition. There's like an audition season in dance, so it's usually somewhere from around January to late spring. So I did the auditions. I knew I had the job around April, and then I moved to Israel in July of that year. I still just came and was working for that year with the dance company. And then after, when I decided that I wanted to stay here, after that full year, I actually made Aliyah after. And then I left the company, which is another transition, and moved to Tel Aviv.
So how did that work? So you worked here. Did you have to get any special visas or anything like that? How does that work?
I had it was an A1 visa. So it allowed you to work. Basically you were a temporary resident. So
Okay.
it's time to decide, instead of just jumping the bandwagon and deciding I want to do this big commitment to making Aliyah. I had time to decide, do I see myself here? Do I think I'm going to live here? Do I think I'm going to stay here? So I decided that I wanted to start putting my feet in the water first before I jumped in.
All right. And then you made Aliyah. When you made Aliyah, were you working at that dance company, or had you broken with them?
Not broken.
No, sorry, that's the wrong phrase. I mean, had you decided to change to a different company or a different course?
Yeah, I'd already decided to change to a different course.
Horrible wording. I'm so sorry about that.
We didn't have.
We're done with you guys. You're dead to me.
I
No,
think
not
there were
at
a
all.
lot of factors that maybe we'll get into it, why I decided to make this transition. That had more to do with other things, and so I took the time to decide where I was transitioning to, and then I decided that it was I have to be honest, like a very convenience thing. Like, it's much easier to live here and be involved actively as a citizen than as a temporary resident. So I made that choice.
That's fine. So then you decided to continue your studies.
Yeah. So basically what happened was, okay. So I went back for my master's. I'm trying to think where's the best way to start. I went back for my master's. I went to Tel Aviv University. They had an international master's program in conflict resolution and mediation. And
not seeing the connection
right.
at all.
So that's the thing. Where is the connection? The connection for me had started a while back. I'd for a long time been interested in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in terms of the context of how people are living in Israel. And I had already, in my undergraduate degree, I'd majored in dance, but I'd already been minoring in political science, knowing this was something I was interested in. And during this minor, my first course was actually an introduction to peace building course. And
an introduction to peace building?
Peace building, yes.
That's so neat.
And that's cool. What I thought. And I was like, wow, this is something I'm really interested in. So I kind of geared all my classes towards peace building and conflict resolution within my minor, and already started to begin researching, okay, what is this intersection between my life of dance as well as this peace building component. Then I let it go.
Hold on one sec.
Yes.
So I was in the military for 10 years.
Okay.
So conflict resolution for me is very specific, but I am 100% sure that my concept of conflict resolution is not yours and may not be for some of our viewers and listeners. What is conflict resolution and peace building?
Okay, well, that's a huge question.
It's if
I
you
think
could,
even after the degree.
No, I know.
And there's still, as it's more of a new field, especially peace building, there's still a lot of discussion around exactly what does this mean. So there's resolving conflict in terms of just putting an end to violence, which is probably how most people think about it. But there's this idea from Galtung of negative peace and positive peace. So it's not just about ending the conflict. It's about what happens. Like, are you actually paying attention to the root causes?
Sorry.
That's okay. The root causes of the conflict so that it doesn't cycle back. Like, the ending violence is not necessarily ending conflict. There's a difference. And peace building, which was especially advocated by someone named John Paul Lederach, and he really pushed this idea of what is understanding how to get multiple players involved. This is not just about militaries. This is not just about high level government. There's multiple tiers. How are we also engaging with grassroots activism and then these middle players? And how do we think in the long term, not just ending the conflict now, but what happens 20 years down the line, and what initiatives are we putting in place to handle that? So that's the type of peace building that I'm working more within in terms of grassroots
You
peace
did
building.
a great job explaining it.
Thank you.
That was you compressed it into an absorbable chunk. I don't
Edible chunk.
Yes, it's an edible bit. But all right, so and you were at Tel Aviv University.
Right. So at Tel Aviv University is where then I went back for my degree, because while I was here in the dance company, there was something especially, like I said, I had this previous interest in it, but I kind of put it aside to focus on a dance career. And then being here, living in Israel, living in Beersheba, there was something so much more tangible about not only the broader conflict, but also especially relations between Jews and Palestinian citizens within Israel. And I felt that I needed to be taking a more active role, and to do that, I needed more of the tools. And so I went back for the master's for that reason and decided to put dance aside for the time being. And I really focused on, okay, what are all these approaches that we can make to conflict resolution that the program offers you, from political to socio-psychological, even faith perspectives on conflict resolution. And I was trying to get away from the dance and get the theory, and every time I kept approaching it from a dancer mindset, from a dance perspective. Oh, there's so many things that in dance, which is so inherently relational, you're dealing with conflict in its own way every day, conflict between navigating the space, navigating the relationship within yourself or between people. And so that kept coming back into it. And then I decided this is really what I want to focus on. And that's the connection that somehow came for me.
We got there.
That integrating dance into a peace building framework.
Now, before we get into it, because this is where you're going to start talking about minds in motion. You, when we were at Ulpan,
yes,
a bunch of us kept trying to get you to come out and do stuff and go on trips with us. And you were, I have to do something. You were involved in a couple of things, and they weren't related to dance.
No, at that time, honestly, I was just working to make money.
Oh,
that's
all
why.
right. That's what that was. No problem. Outside of that, have you been involved in any other organizations or any other things before we go into Minds in Motion?
While I did my degree, I was interning with Givat Haviva, which is a nonprofit that focuses on shared society in Israel. And I was working, they have a center, an art center, and I was working with them to try to develop and integrate dance into their programming, into their exhibits. Because basically in general, in the field and Israel, there's a lot more focus on other arts, whether it's visual arts or theater, and music especially, and not so much dance. I think there's still a taboo around dance and integrating.
Well, even backgammon. There's a big thing in Jerusalem with backgammon.
They have everything. So I think that was I was there to help start a discussion around that, and to develop. Also, we were investigating how can you use develop nonverbal tools for cross-cultural dialogue with mediators who are training to help their communities. What can we learn from dance and dance ways of thinking that will aid people to better pick up on nonverbal cues, because there's so much, like there's statistics that sometimes even up to 90% of our communication is nonverbal. And so when there's no emphasis on that, then you're really missing something.
So then you're telling me that what you have in mind doesn't exist.
No,
No, that's good.
I think it's there, and there's lots of people, and now, over the past few years, I've worked with lots of people who are now active in the field and trying to integrate dance. I think it just exists. It's often under the radar and exists a lot less than
not
the
for
other
long.
arts.
No, not for long.
So we're trying to bring it more to the forefront, and yeah.
Well, all right. So now we'll move. So you are now the program coordinator for Minds in Motion, and Minds in Motion is everything that you've just been telling me about.
Sort of, yes. So
okay,
we're focused on children. Minds in Motion. So I'm the program coordinator for Minds in Motion Israel, which is a project within Minds in Motion, which is the outreach initiative actually of the Richmond Ballet, which is based in Virginia. And Minds in Motion there is a means to bring dance education into the school day for fourth graders all across the state of Virginia.
Okay.
And I actually was involved in that when I was a fourth grader. It kind of sparked a love for dance in me. Yeah. So I have this really crazy full circle thing going on. But about 10 years ago, there was an initiative through the Virginia Israel Advisory Board, and they wanted to bring cultural programming along with other work they were doing, make connections between Virginia and Israel. And so basically they knew of Minds in Motion. They decided, okay, let's see how this can be an effective program here. And when they started working with the schools and with the principals here, they understood that this could have a really powerful potential here beyond just bringing dance education to school day, to connect minds and bodies, to develop spatial awareness and relational awareness. But here it could also be a platform for cross-cultural encounter. So really it was through the principals here that this initiative took this shape, recognizing the needs they had within their own communities. And we started working at the time with a school in Beit Yitzchak and Emek Hefer and a school in Kalantua. And
what are the age groups of these schools?
We work generally with fourth graders or fifth graders, which is Kita Dalet or Kita He. And it's usually trying to pair communities that are nearby. I should probably take a step back.
That's okay. No problem.
Basically, within Israel, there's a lot of divides, but there's a big divide within the education system. Jewish citizens and Palestinian citizens live separately often, and also go to school separately. The Jewish students study in Arabic, and Palestinian citizens study in Jewish citizens study in Hebrew. That'd be quite unique.
That would be, what are you going to do? It's okay. No problem.
Students study in Arabic. And there's no opportunity to really meet the other. And this fosters a lot of not only divides, but also ingrained stereotypes and prejudices. And so that's why this idea of having these encounter programs, opportunities to meet each other, eventually there needs to be a step past that where you engage in dialogue, you try to address the imbalances in society and inequalities. But at the moment, especially for young children, the arts are a really unique way to create a platform, to create a shared language for students to come together. And that's what we focus on in Minds in Motion Israel, is using dance to build that shared interest, build that shared language, this innate language of movement, to create connections, to create relationships, to break down divides. And
how long are these programs? Are they throughout the school year, or are they little workshops that are done, or how does that work?
They're workshops for now. They're 2 weeks. We have staff that are trained. We have a very specific pedagogy teaching style, and the staff come over from the U.S. And it's 2-week workshops. The first week is just with the individual schools, really working, to develop the students' own confidence in the material. It's not technical. We're doing like creative movements. You can really connect with both boys and girls. And the students don't even realize it, but they just get engaged. We don't give them the second to think about what they're doing. They jump in, and opportunities to find ways to work as a team within their own communities first. And then in the second week, they come together for shared rehearsals for a big shared final performance that they have in front of both their communities. They perform in both schools and both communities. And they also get to do activities outside of the workshop where we use movement and other arts to create icebreaker activities for the kids to connect.
That's good. That's really good. Now, okay, so what I'm picturing is that this happens. Are these after school programs? Are they during school?
For us, it's very important that it's during the school day, just like in the U.S. Every kid has to participate. So when I say it's fourth grade, if we are working with, the fourth grade at a school, right now we just finished a residency with a school in Ra'anana and a school in Kalantua, the whole fourth grade participates. So that's 180 students altogether, approximately 90 from each school. Everyone's taking a 45-minute class every day, and then they're all together the second week. And on stage, it's really powerful because you're looking at 180 students, and you don't know who's who. the audience is made up of both communities, and so that's kind of where the magic happens.
What has been the response from parents?
The parents are always a bit tentative at first, and there's a lot of fear, I think, too, within the parents.
Both communities.
I have to say, especially from the Jewish communities. I think that's just the way it is too, no matter what, if you have majority and minority relations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, and they're like, how will and also small things, how will the kids learn 4 dances? How will they manage to perform? How will it all happen? And then when it's really powerful when they get to see the performance, because now they understand what their kids have been doing, why they've been committed to this, why we dedicate 45 minutes every day to dancing. And usually afterwards, the parents are very moved. We engage the audience too in some dancing. And I think it's not only an experience for the students, but it's experience for the two communities.
Now, what are so this is Minds in Motion.
Yes.
And this is just in this one location?
Right now, we work with 4 schools. We have 2 residencies. We just finished the residency I just talked about, and now we have another residency coming up in March with a school in the Menashe region and a school in Baca al Gharbia. And so we're getting geared up for that. But we just grew actually from having 1 residency per year to 2 residencies per year. So now we reach around 360 students. And we're always thinking about how we can grow further. But at the moment, we have the 2 workshops.
Now, is there any thought into, and from what I'm hearing, it's a successful program. Everyone's really getting a lot out of it. Not just the kids, but you guys as well. Is there thought to establishing some type of structure, building a location and having, even summer camps, something like that? Because I know that when the teachers go on strike, the parents in this country lose their minds, just like in the U.S. But when you don't have stuff for kids to do on both sides, it's an issue. And it seems like just a perfect opportunity in the summertime to have something like that, maybe camps. Has there been any? Sorry, go.
No, go for it. It's a really unique idea that we haven't thought of so much before. I think one teacher once brought it up to us because for us, it's really important that it's within the school so that it's seen as not just something you do after school, not something you do in summer, but this is important, like a subject like math or science or history. But I know some of the schools do have summer camps in terms of summer study. So I think that has been mentioned before. The difficulty right now is in terms of growth in general is that our base is in the U.S. So, until we would have like a base of teachers, a base of a foundation here, we really rely on when the faculty can come over from the U.S., when it's ideal for the school. So usually that's during the year. And we really value the level of the teaching standard of how we teach. It's something for us that is not just using, having an encounter program, and we use the arts for that. It's really at its base, it's a dance program, and then that is facilitating the encounter. So having this artistic integrity of what we value is also important for us, and not just to grow, but also to think about how do we maintain that in our growth.
No, that's excellent. That's awesome. Okay, so all right, is that all that you're doing right now? That's a lot. Don't get me wrong. Is that all that's on the plate for you?
No. I have a few different side projects. So one, I'm working with a team of other youth, of other young adults that we're trying to establish an Israeli chapter of an international nonprofit called Global Unites, which also deals with youth and conflict transformation. And right now we're exploring how do we make that what does an Israeli chapter of that look like? and what is our priorities at the moment. We're starting just to run a pilot project.
Now, before you go into what does an Israeli version of that, what does a version of it in another country look like?
It really depends.
Okay.
It's different. That's what's become unique about it. It's unique to the conflict context in any country. There are chapters in the U.S., but there's also a lot of chapters in Africa and Asia, and it really depends on the conflict that a community is facing. And because here we also have the unique situation, there's also a Palestinian chapter. So right now we're the Israeli chapter, and we're focusing at the moment on the context of division or relations within Israel. So to go into what an Israeli chapter looks like, we're still exploring that. But at the moment, we're trying to really engage. How do we engage youth in? Because conflict also, we're talking about this broad understanding of conflict. So it's not just like, okay, how do we solve things or how do we meet each other? There's so many levels of what conflict is. And there's stuff that's at a really local level that's important too within individual communities. So just a step of getting youth to engage. So civic engagement within their communities. How do we cultivate that? And especially in a medium that connects with them. So at the moment, we're working with the idea of civilian journalism, sharing about their community through their eyes and the challenges and unique issues or potential facing their community, and using social media, specifically Instagram, as a platform to share stories and also connect with youth from other communities.
Wow. Holy cow.
But that's very, very much just at the beginning. So we're
excited.
That's
exciting, though. That's a lot of fun. That sounds really cool. Dude, from the time I met you, so much has happened.
Yeah.
So much has happened. Okay, there's one more thing that I wanted to hit on. By the way, all the things that you're working on are so exciting. They're so exciting, and I am so proud of you.
Thank you.
I want to go back a little bit to when you, it would actually maybe even be a little bit before making Aliyah. So where do you come from specifically?
I come from Richmond, Virginia.
Okay. So Richmond, Virginia is not Tel Aviv, is not Beersheba. So what are probably one or two things that you had to adjust to? You had to change your mode of operation.
Okay.
That was horribly framed. I am so sorry. But yeah, what are some issues you had to deal with, and how did you address them?
So, I think I'd been used to living in a variety of different places. Even growing up in Richmond, my family was from New York and New Jersey, so we already had cultural differences. And then I lived in Boston for a bit. I lived in Indiana. So the idea of moving and starting over was less of a challenge. But I think there really is something when you move countries that there's a whole new cultural context. And for the most part, it was exciting. But for sure, especially Beersheba, I think Tel Aviv, it's a very international city. You can get away with not speaking Hebrew the whole time you're here, unfortunately. I think it was actually good that I moved to Beersheba first, because I didn't know Hebrew. It forced me to learn Hebrew. There was not a big American community, so it forced me to reach out and really make Israeli friends, make other international friends. And but overall, everything's very different. I mean, just navigating the bureaucracy, I would say, is probably a big thing that's very different between the States and Israel. I think, trying to get doctor's appointment, facing doctors that only speak Hebrew or Russian. So I think those were like frustrations that I had to learn how things work here. Okay. And obviously you still have that. There's also cultural differences, Israelis are very, very much, direct and to the point. It's the point that can almost feel a bit intrusive. And so understanding how to balance, what I still value of myself and my culture from the States, and also adapting to, okay, but how can I still, get my point across, get what I need done here.
Now, where does your family originally come from?
Like originally. So my dad's family is originally from Poland, from Warsaw, and from
Okay, go on.
That's where Zaslav's from. and they left right before World War II. And then my mom's family, I think, is mostly from Russia. They're actually Mendez, so they traced their family originally back to Spain and leaving in the Inquisition and heading to Europe and coming over. But we definitely have mostly Ashkenazi.
Now, do you have family here in Israel?
I do not have family here in Israel.
Do you find, though, with your background, any connection with people who are from here, communities that live here already?
I think no matter what, if you're Jewish wherever you are in the world, immediately there's some type of connection in the history and the tradition and the culture. And I know that spoke to me from the first time I was here, especially because I didn't grow up in New York or Miami or LA. I grew up in Virginia and Indiana, places where there's very small Jewish communities.
Oh, I live 50 miles north of New York. I am the Jew in town, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
So that was the experience, and I think for me, in a lot of ways, it was a beautiful thing to come here and obviously find a sense of belonging and have, the holidays be the holidays that I celebrate, and not having to feel like, okay, I have to balance this identity between American and Jewish. At the same time, it was a huge shock to my system because I was going from being this minority to being the majority, and here that has a lot of baggage that holds with it. And also my understanding growing up, I grew up as like a Reform Jew, very involved in, like, my understanding of Judaism was tikkun olam and social activism. That was what it was. And good food. And then here,
excellent food.
Yeah. Although I learned here that there's some even better food. But here it was really, there's this whole conflict between what is being Jewish, like what's being secular, what's being religious, and trying to navigate, okay, before I identified, Reform religious, and here I'd be secular. Like what does that mean now? How do I still balance my Jewish identity and what Judaism means here? So I think those were the biggest probably cultural differences in terms of it gave me a lot of opportunities I didn't have in the States, but also it posed a lot of new conflicts for me to figure out for myself.
That brings me actually to something that I just thought of. How do you have religious kids in some of your programs?
We don't have religious Jewish kids. We have no Orthodox community we work with. We do have kids within the Muslim community that I think the areas that we work with, Kalantwa, most people would consider themselves religious. And I think that's for sure something that when we first approach the school, it's a question of dance. It really has to be discussed. And for us, dance is more in the terms of creative movement. It's how we present it. We're not doing one-on-one contact. This is a way to express yourselves. Like the Palestinian community here has a really rich experience with dance in terms of traditional dance, dapke. They have a really beautiful tradition of dance in their community.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's amazing to look into. But I think that we still have the question always of where does dance and religion intermix, but we don't have Orthodox communities that we work with.
Okay, because that was that was in line with something else I wanted to ask, which was, what are some of the difficulties that you run into with do you run into any difficulties? Do you run into any? You have the kid who, and the only thing I can think of, and this is totally unrelated, but the kid who goes to the soccer coach about their kid every 25 minutes during a game. Since it's during the school day, you're not going to have something like that, but you may have something else.
So luckily, usually the schools, we have to have a principal who very much believes in the program, and who also has a parent body that believes in the program and the values of the program. And if not, it can't be effective. So
have you run into that?
We had a school that we worked with for the whole first 8 years of the program, and I said they were really the ones who shaped the program, and we had principals who at first were very much on board with it. And we had a school who we originally worked with in Kalanto, a different school. And in both those schools, the principals switched. And after it was no longer a priority, they're either interested more in STEM and math and science, or or had other values within their education curriculum. And yes, once we lost the support of the principals, and the program was no longer relevant to them. Sometimes in other cases, we had the support of a principal that we were recruiting, and they couldn't get their parent body involved. So it's sort of, you need to have this balance of having the community involved. So usually we can't even launch the program. Like after we get past recruitment, then the challenges, there are of course parents who, nowadays I think parents are very lenient to let their kids decide what they want to do and don't want to do. And so we really have to push, especially if it's a new school, to really explain this is a subject that I was saying before, like math or science.
Yes,
absolutely. You don't choose whether to participate or not. If it doesn't suit you, there's a phrase in Hebrew, is Ballet, and the kids love to say it. It drives me crazy. So I'm like, it doesn't really matter if it doesn't suit you. Nothing is going to suit, everyone. But there's still always something you can learn from being involved. And so that's kind of the tactic we take in terms of that.
That's excellent. That's good. Now, what are you guys doing to promote it, to have it? I'm trying to think. So my son used to go to this thing called Rec Center in our town, and it was this great rec center. They had arts programs. They had all these things. And every year you had to fill out the form. And at the bottom, there was a check that you checked off. Do you want your child's likeness or face to be used in any materials? And I would always check it yes. And lo and behold, my son wound up on the cover one year. Is that something you can do with your program to show? Can you take videos of it and maybe have, are you guys on social media? Are you on YouTube showing the program? Are you doing things to promote it?
Yes, I think like any program, we obviously take material photos and videos. We have a video that we usually send around when people want more information. That was a professional video taken not too long ago that really did a powerful job from the adult perspective and the kids' own words explaining.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so neat.
So that's usually our go-to. But no, I think no matter what, we work on, what was experienced. And we also really try to adapt for the experience of the parents and teachers. So every time at the end, we have a feedback meeting from them too, where we gain their input and we can share that. We don't have our own social media because we're an initiative, a project within the Richmond Ballet. And so, but for sure, the Richmond Ballet is promoting us and advertising.
All right, good. Because I have a lot of thoughts about, there are so many different groups that want an end to the issues that exist between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I'm wondering if there are any ways that you can get apolitically hooked up with them, which, that's just a worm's nest. Anyways.
There's a bunch of programs within, once you get into the political sphere, I think things are a bit complicated, but there are the civil society and sector in Israel is very strong, and there was a big component of the civil society that focused on what we call shared society, which we've kind of moved past the term of coexistence, of just existing side by side in peace, but more building shared society. How do we build a more equal society? How do we build like this codependency, this interdependency of really, united citizenship, caring for each other and a need for each other. And like I worked with Givat Haviva, but there's a lot, actually an insane amount of nonprofits that are focusing on these issues within the field. Then the question for us is, I think partnering is always great.
But do your goals align? And
goals, and not even that, how, like for us, what I discussed before about the artistic integrity. So often you can have a program and it's just a program. And because we really have these staff that we're all dancers that have been in a year of training, that for us is a huge value that we think brings a lot to the program. And sometimes if you just become, another program within a list of programs.
It's not what I was saying before a summer camp. You want it to be something that's at par with you.
But I think it is worth looking into. How do we create more of a relationship, or maybe have an Israeli base within one of these networks or these foundations?
That's awesome. All right. Alexandra Zaslav, anyone? finally, in closing, do you have anything that you'd like to mention specifically? Any?
Sure.
Please.
So, well, for my demotion, we have our next workshop. I'm not sure when this is airing. Our next workshop is in March, on March 26th.
Okay.
But if not, we have them every year. So you can check us out through Richmond Ballet, richmondballet.com, and see when things are happening in Israel to keep you informed. And it would be amazing. I think the most powerful way to really experience it is to see the performance, to see it in action. Even with a video, even with photos, there's nothing more powerful, especially with the arts, than experiencing it for yourself. So for sure, come to one of those. I'm also currently working, totally different subject, if we're going to get into this, on a hackathon for social impact in partnership with Tel Aviv University's Masters in Conflict Resolution, Mediation. And that's happening in April 19th to be exact. And we are recruiting any master's students at an Israeli college or university, international or Hebrew programs that are interested in the civil society field, in social activism, and would like to solve challenges posed by major nonprofits within the field. So that's another call out of something totally different, but also not sure if it's airing in time. But.
No, perfect. All right. So what I'll do is I'll put all of this, if you're watching this on YouTube, look down in the description. I'll have all the URLs and everything. And if you're listening to this, you should be checking out the YouTube version. All right, Alexandra, Alex.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was great to reconnect.
Cool.
את זוכרת איך בכית אליי